afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Dahlberg, and I am an HR consulting manager here at Eide. I've been with the organization for over 16 years now and have been involved in human resources and recruitment for all of my career, which has been close to 30 years now. So this is definitely a topic that is near and dear to my heart and one that I am very passionate about, and I'm excited to visit with you today about it. It's also a topic that I literally could talk about for hours, and since we only have 1 hour, I will be flying through an awful lot of information. So I do plan to send out the presentation to everyone who is participating so that you have the slides themselves and also some notes that I have made, just so that you have that information in case we tend to go through it a little bit quickly. So without further ado, we're going to kick it off. And I always like to start off with some statistics because I think it's important for people to understand why this topic is so important. Right now, unemployment across the nation is at 3.6%, which means that not only are individuals who are highly skilled already employed, but so are individuals who maybe even lack basic skills to do jobs. Anytime unemployment is dipping this low, it means that employers are having to go out there and perhaps hire individuals who don't have the skill sets that they actually need. And that can certainly have an impact on your business. Employee tenure is also better than it used to be. A couple of years ago, we were dealing with tenure of less than a year, and that has improved, but it's still not great. And some of the findings that we found are that individuals who are between the ages of 25 and 34 tend to stay with a company for 3.2 years. Those who are 65 or older tend to stay for 10.3 years. Those in management or professional roles have a tenure of about 5.5 years, and in service occupations, it's 3.2 years. So it's still not great tenure, which means that you really do need to focus efforts on recruiting the best people possible for your organization in order to hopefully increase that tenure. There's also a number of current job postings out there. When I did a search of Indeed, it was in the multi-millions. And what that means is that there are a lot of open positions for really good candidates to choose from. They have options. Also, the length of time to fill an open position right now is anywhere from 5 days to 50 days, depending upon either geographic location or specific skill set that is being required. I think 5 days is kind of short if you're actually doing your due diligence to make sure someone is a great fit. And certainly 50 days is reflective of, like I said, a difficult to fill position, or it could be that organizations don't have recruitment processes in place to facilitate an efficient recruitment process. The cost of turnover right now is anywhere from $15,000 per person for an employee who earns $45,000 a year or less. And it can be as high as 1.5 times annual base compensation for those highly compensated professionals. And we all know what's included in those turnover costs. It's lost productivity, it's lost morale, it's overtime that other employees may have to work in order to cover for the individual who may have left. It also includes recruitment costs that can be anything from job postings to interviewer time to headhunter fees. So it's pretty costly, and we want to make sure that if we're going to be spending dollars on recruitment, that we are utilizing the right types of tasks to make those dollars worthwhile. So my first polling question is, how many positions do you currently have open within your organization right now? All right, so it does look like we have quite a few organizations out there who have a smaller number of positions, but we do have a few who have a lot of positions. So I'm hoping that some of the things that we learned today will benefit you and help you create processes that might make that recruitment process a little easier and less daunting. So anytime you have low unemployment and a lot of positions out there for candidates to choose from, what you're dealing with is what we call the war for talent. It is very, very competitive out there. It's very difficult for people to recruit. candidates and retain them. And so what we are going to focus on is helping you operate with a mindset that emphasizes the importance of talent to the success of your organization. Almost every organization is going to see their greatest asset is their employees. However, what we find is that when it comes to recruitment, it tends to be thought of as just a side job. You know, I've got my regular task I have to get done today, and recruitment is just a side job. And if you're going to win the war for talent for your organization, you're going to have to prioritize recruitment and talent. So what that means is that you really have to think of it as an important responsibility rather than as an afterthought or something that has to be done quickly. You need to make sure that you establish a process that includes the steps that are necessary to find the best possible person to do the job. You have to focus on finding, recruiting, and selecting talent, and those are three very different things. And then you need to make sure that you're utilizing the right people from your organization in your recruitment and interview process. And we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so talking about these things. So what I'd like to know is, do you have a formal recruitment process and tools for your hiring managers to follow or use? And by this, I mean, do you have real processes in place where there are some repercussions if the processes aren't followed? Okay, so it looks like several of you do have a process in place, which is great. Hopefully, I share a couple of things that are new for you to consider. And those of you who don't have a process in place, I'm really hoping that this presentation will give you some suggestions for what you can do to get something implemented. So the way that you start with a recruitment process is to first identify the need. And that need can be anything from, you know, Bob just left the organization and you have to replace Bob, to you've increased your workload and you need to bring someone on, to there is a brand new skill set that is needed and you really need to find somebody who has that skill set. So you have to identify that need. And once you've identified what the need is, then you need to picture your perfect candidate. And a perfect candidate is going to be somebody who you're able to think of, here are all the things that I would give that person. And here's the experience that they would have. And this is the type of person they would have. I've got enough social butterflies on my team. I just need somebody to come in, sit down, and get the job done. Or you may need somebody who is a big picture thinker, right? They're going to come in, they're going to do the job, but you eventually are hoping to hire somebody that you can move up the ladder from a strategic perspective. So what kind of person are they? And then also think about what is missing from your team. What skill set is lacking? What experience is lacking? What type of personality trait is lacking that would really round out your team and make them the best possible team out there for you to succeed in your business? And once you've sat down and really thought about this, thought about what the person is going to do, thought about the type of individual that you need to hire, you have done what we call identifying the purple unicorn. And the purple unicorn is basically a non-existent candidate, okay? But it is so important for you to create your purple unicorn for your position, because that really allows you the opportunity to think about what could be if you found that perfect person. And once you've identified that, then you can go back and have a reality check and realize we may not get all of those things in one person. Right? We may not find somebody who is extremely technically astute and also very, very outgoing and awesome at managing people. So you have to identify what are the critical factors. And my recommendation is to identify the 5 critical factors that you need to have out of your purple unicorn's profile in order for you to move forward with a candidate. It may be that you are asking for 10 years of experience. You might have to settle for 6. It could be that you were looking for somebody who had a specific set of expertise in the area in which your company operates. And it may be that you can find somebody who has experience doing something similar, but may not have that specific expertise. And that's okay, as long as you find somebody who can learn it. So you want to make sure that you identify those must-have traits, experience, skill set, and education. and realize that the rest of it is really nice to have but isn't required. And the reason that you're doing this is you really need to know what it is that you're looking for before you start your recruitment process. Otherwise, you will never find someone that is going to be a good fit. When you take that time to figure out what you're looking for, you actually stand a much better chance of going out there and finding it. Once you've identified that need, it's time to create a job posting. And I put on here, create an interesting job posting, because I would say 98% of the job postings that are out there are job descriptions, and job descriptions are boring. Nobody wants to apply for a job based on a job description. And so what you're going to want to do to create an interesting job posting is to provide some information about the company. For example, if you are growing, if you plan to grow by 20% in the next 2 years, throw that out there. If you are a company that offers flexible work arrangements and amazing benefits, put that out there. Explain something about your organization as the kick-in to the position. And then once you've done that, then share details about the responsibilities and the experience that would help the candidate figure out, why would I want this job and why would I want to work for your company? And it can be really, really interesting. My recommendation is to pick those 5 critical factors that you've identified that have to be fulfilled, and come up with ways to describe how the employee would actually do those things in the job on a daily basis without it sounding like a job description. For example, instead of saying something like, manage software system conversions for an IT person, you could say, in the role of a program manager, you would be responsible for working with professionals from the IT, manufacturing, and accounting departments to identify the critical data and steps needed to implement a new software program and transition data from the old platform to the new. That sounds far more interesting than manage software system conversions, right? So it's just a way of getting creative. And if you happen to have marketing individuals on your staff, I highly recommend partnering your recruitment with your marketing folks, because they can help you be more creative. Once you've come up with an interesting job posting, now you need to make sure you get that position out there. And there is anywhere outside of your company. All right, so you're going to want to make sure that you post it on your website. If you don't have the capability to post positions on your website, you need to get with your IT professional and figure out a way to make that happen, because candidates will want, if they see your position, they're going to want to come to your website and they're going to want to see the position again on your website. You also will want to partner with colleges. If you have local colleges that you recruit from, talk with not only their career services center for any new college grads, but you can partner with their alumni center as well. There are a lot of colleges out there that do tremendous work with their alumni, and alumni tend to want to stay connected to their college. And if somebody is planning on returning to the area, if they've moved out of the area for some reason and now they want to come back, they're absolutely going to look at their alumni network. So college job boards are usually a great place for you to post your position to get some visibility. Indeed.com, if you are posting your position on your website or anywhere else, Indeed actually does what they call scraping your website, and they put the position out on their site as well. Whether you want them to or not, they tend to do it. I recommend that if you have a position that's a little tougher to fill, or you have a critical need, that you pay the fee that Indeed.com charges to have your position posted with a little bit more priority and more visibility. It can get you a whole lot more candidates in a very short period of time. And then industry association sites. If you are part of professional associations related to your business, then I would highly recommend posting your position through those industry association sites, or just through your general distribution list that you might have for the professional associations that you're members of. By doing that, you're actually getting word out that your organization has a position within the specific target group that may actually want to pursue that type of an opportunity. The next thing you can do is utilize social media. And I know that a lot of companies are afraid to use social media for business purposes. If you are, then the simplest thing you can do is just use LinkedIn. You can go out to LinkedIn and just post that you have an opportunity, you're looking for the next great team member to join your staff, and then provide a link for them to click on to get to the job posting and apply. And if you utilize Facebook for business purposes, absolutely do the same thing on Facebook. Put out there that you're hiring and list your position. And for those of you who I saw had more than 51 job openings, chances are highly likely you are active on social media with regards to just business in general, and setting it up so that you post your 5 most critical positions each week can be a great way to get the word out to folks who might be following you on Facebook. And then for those of you who are really into social media, tweeting about your positions on Twitter is another great way to get it out there. The last option you should resort to is utilizing a staffing agency. And if you do need to utilize a staffing agency, make sure that you partner with someone who understands your business, understands your needs, and allows you to stay in control of the process. Meaning, you tell them what types of pre-screening questions to ask candidates. They forward you resumes and phone interview notes so that you can take a look at the information and determine who you want to interview. You control setting up the interview. You control the offer process, and make sure that you're partnering with someone who allows you to do those things so that you're in more control of creating the positive experience about your organization. You have to keep in mind that a lot of times with staffing agencies, that they have probably pitched that same candidate to several of your competitors, or at least to several other companies. Their job is to find that person a job so that they can make money off of it. And so if you are going to utilize a staffing agency, you want to make sure that you have a partnership with them. It's not just, hey, here's our position, find us somebody and send them in for an interview. You want to have a little bit more involvement than that. All right, so you've got your position posted, you've got it out there to the external world. You also should think about finding talent within your network. And talent within your network includes your internal talent, which would be people who might be on your current team. It could be individuals who are part of your organization working in a different area. You know, take a look and see if there is anyone internally that you might be able to move into the position, and do what we call upskilling of talent. In today's world, retention involves a number of different things, and one of the key factors that makes an employee want to stay with an organization is knowing that there are opportunities for growth. And so upskilling talent means that you might take someone internally and realize that they have the potential to do the job. They may not have all the experience and the skill sets yet, but you give them some of the tasks so that they can grow into the role as opposed to hiring externally. So that's one thing that you can do is to look at your internal talent. Another thing you can do is solicit employee referrals. Who do your employees know in the industry? Think of ways that you can get them to refer individuals they may have gone to school with or may have worked with at a previous employer, or someone they might go to church with or go to the gym with. Employee referrals are one of the easiest ways of getting good candidates in the door, because your employees know what it's like to work in your organization. They are able to sell your organization to somebody that they might know, and it's more of a warm sell than it is a cold sell or a hard sell when it comes to trying to get that candidate interested. And if you have it within your financial resources, offering a referral bonus is always a great way to go. I do like to stipulate that it's important to give the referral bonus right after the employee is hired and not force somebody to wait a year before they get a referral bonus. The employee's job is not to keep the employee in the organization. That is the job of leadership and management. The employee who is referring somebody for a position, it was just their job to actually refer somebody who might be qualified. And so if they refer someone, if you put them through your rigorous recruitment process and determine that they're a good fit, then the employee has done what they needed to do. And so I do recommend doing that referral bonus right away. The other thing you want to look at is your own network contacts. Who do you know in the industry and who do they know? And the easiest way to reach out on that is through LinkedIn, because that tends to get to the 7 degrees of separation. The person that you hire for your position is somehow connected to someone within your company right now. And it may be a distant connection, but you need to do whatever you can to find that talent within your network. And all of these things are what we call low-hanging fruit, because it's all right out there for you. You just need to put forth a little bit of effort to look at your current employees and see if there's someone there, to encourage your employees to make referral recommendations, and also to reach out to your own network. This is fast and it's very inexpensive. It's a great way to find candidates. Okay, so once the position is posted and you've reached out to your network and your employees have done the same, candidates should start coming in. And once they do, once they express an interest in your position, the clock starts ticking. For them, the second they submit their resume, the clock is starting to tick. And you need to make sure that recruitment is a priority, because I can guarantee your competitors are making sure recruitment is a priority. If you are going after the same types of candidates as your competitors, you need to be fast at responding to candidates. And just remember the old adage, time kills all deals. All right, so here's a polling question. Do you follow up with all candidates who apply for your positions, or just those that you have an interest in? Okay, so it's 50-50. All right, oh my goodness, I don't know what's... Okay, so it looks like half of you do respond with everyone, the other half only respond with candidates that you're interested in. So then here's a follow-up to that. How quickly do you follow up with candidates that you have an interest in once they've applied? Okay, great. Well, I am very, very happy to see that there is a majority of folks who do follow up relatively quickly. So that is good. For those of you who are not responding quickly, please know that that is something that a candidate takes into consideration. Everything they experience throughout the recruitment process is a reflection to them of how the company traditionally operates in every area. And while it may only be recruitment, if you don't respond to them, they get the sense that, well, if I start to work for them, they're not going to be very responsive, or they're not going to communicate well. If you respond to them right away, they see that as, oh, these people know how to make decisions and move forward quickly. Right? So just keep that in mind, and you may want to alter your process with regards to reaching out to candidates, because all candidates expect to receive some sort of notification. So we're going to talk about the different phases of the recruitment process, and it starts with things like the resume review, which leads to a discussion over the phone or over coffee or lunch, which then leads to an application, references, background check, and then leads to the in-office interview. And after the in-office interview, then comes the hiring decision and the offer. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail on all of these. So with the resume review, my recommendation is to respond to every single candidate who sends in a resume at the time that they send the resume in. So if you have an applicant tracking system, you can usually set up automated responses. If you don't, if you are utilizing an Outlook inbox type system for managing your resumes, set up an automated signature so that when you see a resume come in, you just have to send that signature out, which indicates, thank you for your interest in our position. We received your resume. We will follow up with you within 1 week, or if it's 2 weeks, put 2 weeks. If we have an interest in pursuing you further, thank you again. By doing this, the candidate knows that you've received their information, and they're 10 times more likely not to reach out to you to ask you, did you receive my resume? So make sure that you do send some sort of a response. You should review resumes as they come in and review them at least once a day. So set aside some time when you have open positions to review resumes, and just make sure that you're going through those on a regular basis, as opposed to saying, I'm going to post the position for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to review the resumes, and then I will get in touch with people I'm interested in. During that 2-week time, half of your candidates have already found other jobs. So you want to make sure that if you have a great candidate, you reach out to them immediately to set up a time to talk further. I always emphasize this as a way of saving your time and your effort. Instead of looking at a resume and immediately saying, well, let's just get them in for an interview, do a phone interview and do that right away. So if you're reviewing a resume, you see somebody you like, you reach out to them, when are you available to have a 20 to 30 minute conversation? Get that scheduled as quickly as possible. And during this time, what you're able to do is share information about the company and the position to get them even more excited, and to ask some basic questions from them that will allow you to weed out the less qualified candidates. All right, and some questions that you can ask, why are you interested in this position? And why are you interested in our company? That way you can see if they even did any preparation or have a specific interest in you. You can find out why they left or want to leave previous employers. You can find out if they've been terminated from a position. And whenever I ask that question, I always ask, have you ever been terminated? What was the situation and what did you learn? Because we do realize that not every employer is as awesome as we are. And we want to make sure that if somebody was in a bad situation and was terminated, that we find out the details from it and don't just say that we're not going to pursue them because they've been terminated. You'll want to ask them about their experience that relates to the position, and you can tie it back to those 5 core criteria that you're requiring. You want to know when they'd be available. And then this last question is a good one to ask, so that if you do not provide sponsorship for individuals who are not legally authorized to work in the United States, you're not wasting any more time with the candidate, and you're not wasting the candidate's time. So you can always end that conversation with, do you have the legal right to work in the United States? And would you require sponsorship to work for our company? The pre-screen is a great way for you to also get a sense of their professionalism over the phone, and also how seriously and how prepared they are for the interview, and how well they are able to convey themselves and their experience when they're not sitting right there in front of you. So it is a great way to save time, because like I said, these usually only last about 15 to 30 minutes. You don't have to invite them into the office and take care of all those other things, and you can do the pre-screens relatively quickly after receiving the resume. After the phone interview, you want to select your top candidates to bring in for an interview. So if you set aside a day to do phone interviews, get them all done, make your decision. For the candidates that you do want to pursue, you're going to move them on to the next step in the process, which might be scheduling them for the in-office interview. You may want to get all of that pesky HR paperwork taken care of in between the time that you talk with them on the phone and they come in. So send them the application and have them provide you with employment-related reference information, and get all of that stuff out of the way so that once you do the in-office interview, you can move forward relatively quickly with a hiring decision. For those candidates that you know for certain you are not going to pursue after the phone interview, you should send them some sort of rejection notification, whether that's a letter, or in today's world we send emails, but make sure that you get in touch with them and thank them for their time. Let them know it was great to speak with them, but that you've decided to pursue a candidate who more closely matches the skill set you're looking for. So here's another polling question. Who do you include as part of your interview team? Is it just the higher level folks in your organization? Is it just the supervisors or managers? Is it a combo of those two? Or do you include peer level individuals in the interview process? Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you guys. It used to be that folks only utilized executives. I do see that there are a few individuals who do only utilize executives. This is going to be my one pitch for the session today. If you change anything in your process, I highly recommend you change it to include peer level individuals. And they have a different role on the interview team than the executives do, of course. But it's pretty important to involve those individuals, and we're going to talk about that right now. So you've done your pre-screen. Now it's time to get ready for folks to come into the office for the interview. One of the first things you need to do is to identify the key individuals within your organization who should be included in the interview process. these should be your top performers. They should be the people that you want to duplicate if you could, right? You want more of these kinds of people in your organization. That's who should be included in the interview, because those are the types of people that are going to attract the kind of folks that you want to join, right? At a minimum, these are the 3 different levels within the organization that should be included in the interview process. The first one is the peer level employee. Okay, so that would be somebody, excuse me, somebody that the candidate would work with if they were hired. You want to include the supervisor or the manager, so someone that the candidate will actually receive work direction from. And then you also want to include that senior manager or executive level individual, because that's somebody that the candidate will see as in charge. And the reason it is important for you to include all these levels is that candidates want to know who they're going to work with. They want to know who's going to be side by side with me doing this job, who is going to be telling me what I need to do and doing my performance evaluation, and who is going to be the person in charge leading this organization into the future. And if they can interact with those individuals during the interview, they can picture themselves working for your organization. They picture themselves working side by side with this person, maybe going out to lunch, maybe going to a happy hour. They can picture themselves sitting in a room, talking with this manager, learning from them, growing with them, and they can picture following the direction that the executive has put forth for the organization. Then they are so much more likely to accept an offer if one is presented to them. They have that visual, they can see themselves. And I would even take it a step further and say that during the interview, if you take people on a tour, point out where they would be sitting. And this is where you would be sitting, or this is the area where you would be sitting, and let them see what it's like. That visual has a tremendous impact on a candidate. If they don't know who it is that they're going to be meeting with or working with once they get hired, then that retention number could potentially go down. You want to make sure you include the right people in the process and that the candidate has the opportunity to interact with them. Part of the preparation for the in-office interview with that interview team that you identify is to come up with standard interview questions that are going to be asked of every single candidate who is interviewed for the position. These would be questions that you would ask to determine if they have the technical capabilities to do the job, if they have experienced specific things in the job, in previous jobs that they would experience with your organization if they're hired, their different preferences with regards to career development or where they want to take their career. Anything that you want to know from a candidate that will help you determine if they are qualified for the job, you need to develop a standard interview question for it. And the reason for that is if you bring in 5 candidates, you want to ask all 5 candidates the same question so that you can compare apples to apples and not apples to coffee. The next thing is that you need to identify which of those questions each of the interviewers are going to ask. So which questions is the peer level employee going to ask? Which questions will the supervisor ask? And which questions will that executive ask? You also want to figure out what information each of those individuals is going to share during the interview. Right? So maybe the peer level individual talks about the social activities that go on, or how often performance evaluations take place, or what the day-to-day role would look like. And the supervisor might talk about career progression and the department and how it fits into the organization. And then the executive might talk about the strategic initiatives or the goals of the organization and what the plan is for moving forward and how this position fits into that. So each member of the interview team has their role. They know what information they're supposed to share with the candidate. They know what questions they're going to ask. And that assures us that every candidate's experience is similar. It also assures us that the candidate is getting information and they're able to share information, because that's what a candidate wants to do when they come to an interview, is tell you how fabulous they are. And you're providing them with the opportunity for them to learn and to also educate. And we're doing the same. And by doing it this way, it ensures that every single interviewer is asking different questions and providing different information, so that it's not just one candidate sitting through the Tell me about your strengths. Tell me about your weaknesses. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right? Those questions may very well be asked, but they're not going to be asked of every single person that they meet with. When you go into an interview, it's important to understand what the purpose of that interview is. As I mentioned, it's to share information about the organization and the position, and to get the candidate excited about your organization and the position. It's also to gather information from them. The main purpose is to determine if they're a fit for the position in the organization and to create a positive experience. Your reputation is on the line every time you interview a candidate. And if a candidate has a positive experience through their recruitment and interview process, they are going to think favorably of you, even if they are not selected for the position. Before stepping into an interview, you need to make sure that your interviewers are watching for their biases, and we all have them. The halo effect is the bias where first impression, oh, you like the way they dress, you like their handshake, they're smiling, they're energetic, they're very polite. Okay, I like them. All of a sudden now all you're doing is looking for the good in them. Versus the horn effect. The candidate shows up late for the interview. You're really irritated by that. They seem frazzled. And so therefore you're only looking for the bad in the interview. You have the just like me syndrome where they remind you of you. And there is nobody better at your job than you are, so they must be fabulous too. And therefore you are only looking at positive traits in them and not seeking out any of the negative traits. And then there's also stereotyping, which means that you're assuming that they're going to behave a certain way because of one characteristic. Oh, I see you went to the Carlson School of Management, and because you had a friend who went there and you feel a certain way about the folks who go to Carlson School of Management, now you are kind of displacing that on this candidate simply because of the school that they went to. Biases can ruin an interview. And actually, biases are the reason that standard interview questions and an interview process can come in handy. Because even if you have a bias against someone based on your first impression, if you ask the standard interview questions, you're still going to learn whether they have the skill set to do the position or not. When it comes time for the interview, you want to make sure that everyone reviews the candidate's resume, the phone screen notes, any other materials that they've received prior to the interview. Nobody should ever walk into an interview and go, oh, give me just a second and let me take a look at your information. Or, hey, I was just given this a second ago, I need a minute to look at it. That's rude, and it creates a very unfavorable impression of the organization to the candidate. So make sure that you review that information ahead of time and that you are ready for your interview. You know what standard interview questions that you're going to ask, and by looking at their resume and the phone interview notes, you can identify additional questions that you might ask based on the information they've provided. So questions you might want to follow up on. Be on time to the interview. Do not keep a candidate waiting alone in a conference room. When you're done interviewing, wait until the next interviewer gets there and do the introductions. And if you're the last person, then you want to make sure that you walk them out. During the interview, introduce yourself to the candidate by providing your name, your position title, and how long you've been with the organization. Ask your questions, so ask your standard questions, provide the information that you're responsible for providing, and ask the candidate if they have questions. You want to make sure that they're given that opportunity because chances are highly likely they do have quite a few, and you want to make sure you get them answered. Let the candidate know your timeline for making a decision. So if you are interviewing other candidates, go ahead and let them know that and tell them how quickly you'll be following up. And then in the end, walk the candidate out, take care of assisting them with any parking details that might need to be taken care of, and thank them for their time. Make sure that you leave things on a positive note. Now, I will tell you, sometimes it is difficult. In my close to 30 years of interviewing, I have certainly met candidates who I knew immediately were not the right fit for the position. And I still went through, I asked my standard interview questions, I provided them with information, I told them when we would follow up, and they left feeling positive about the experience, even though I then sent them a rejection notification later. You want to make sure that every interview is handled that way, as I mentioned, because you want to maintain your company's reputation. After your interviews, it's time to make a decision, and you need to do that quickly. So get together with all the interviewers, make a decision regarding the candidate. And if you like the candidate, let them know immediately. If you have other interviews scheduled, let them know that you were very impressed by them, that you'll stay in touch, and that you will you'll let them know the decision as soon as one has been made, but that they made a very favorable impression on you. Also provide them the opportunity to stay in touch with you. In the event that they have other interviews scheduled, let them know that you want to be in touch. If they need to make a decision more quickly, to be sure to keep you in the loop, because you'd hate to lose them as a candidate. And if you have determined that they lack the skills or the experience or just aren't a fit with your organization, then let them know within 2 days of the interview that you're not pursuing them further. I highly recommend waiting at least a day and a half to 2 days. You don't want them to still be in the parking lot while you're sending the rejection notification out. So let them have the impression that you've really thought about it before you contact them. But candidates do expect to hear back from you one way or another within 2 days, even if that's to say, we were really impressed, we're still in our interview process, but we want to make sure you know that you are absolutely in contention for the position. The longer you take to make your decision, the less interested candidates become. And when unemployment's at 3.6% and we have millions of jobs out there for them to choose from, you don't want to lose somebody because you didn't get in touch with them to let them know. This will be my second thing that I say I hope you take with you from this webinar. You should never hire anyone without doing a background check and references on them. There are a number of great organizations out there that do background checks. Eide Bailey's Forensic Accounting Group does them. And through those background checks, you can confirm education, employment. If the position requires it, you can check credit, felony convictions, and driving records. So you want to make sure that you are doing that background check. You would be shocked at the number of people whose background check comes back with at least something in it that needs to be followed up on. And that something could be something as simple as they put down that they worked for a company for 9 months, but they really only worked there for 7, right? So some of these things are not, catastrophic, but you certainly do find out a lot through background checks. And then work-related references can confirm their experience, their attendance, their attitude, strengths, and weaknesses. And I know everyone says, oh, but you can't get references. I mean, nobody gives references anymore. Yes, they do. And it's just the way that you approach it. You need to tell your candidate, I have to get 2 work-related references for you. So I need for you to provide me with the names and phone numbers of previous coworkers, managers, somebody who will tell me something about you when I speak with them. And you let them know up front that that's a requirement. And then they can get in touch with their references, let them know to be expecting your call, and it goes pretty smoothly. In 30 years of working in recruitment, I have never been denied the opportunity to find references on a candidate. And if you think about things, each one of us has that person within our organization that if we decided we needed to move on and we needed a reference, we could count on that person to provide us with a reference. So do not be dismayed by the laws and things that are out there or the lawsuits that employees have. Put it back on the candidate to get you the contact information so that you can get all the details that you need before you hire someone. Oh, sorry, I meant to point out in here, you do need to check with your state laws because they do vary with regards to when you can do the background check. In some states, you can still do background checks and references before you extend an offer, but in many states, and that number is growing, you can only do a background check after you have extended an offer of employment. So make sure you check with your state law on that. When you're extending an offer, you want to make sure that you have your offer details figured out before you actually call the candidate. So if this takes some time to work out with executive or management, take that time. You want to have the position title. You want to have the compensation, including any signing bonuses or other offer-related bonuses that you might be offering. You want to have a potential start date identified, and you want to figure out what your offer deadline is. And then when you contact that candidate and verbally extend the offer, do it with some enthusiasm. At least pretend that you're excited that you're extending the offer, if you aren't excited, but you want to make sure that they feel the enthusiasm that you want them to join your organization. And then after you verbally extended the offer, always follow up with that written offer letter, especially if it's pending a background check and references, because you'll want to make sure that you include in the offer letter that the offer is contingent on those factors. Many of you may have candidates that require relocation for your positions. Sometimes you have these difficult to fill positions and you just can't find the talent there locally, so you need to relocate someone. If you have candidates who are coming in from out of town, you can create a really unique experience for them. And what I would like to recommend is just that if you're bringing them to town for an interview, take the time to set up a realtor tour for them. Have them come to town for 2 or 3 days. They fly in, they're going to meet with a realtor. The realtor can take them around and show them whatever it is that they want to see. Whether they want to have, they're interested in private schools, and so they'd like to see the different private schools, or they want homes in this type of a neighborhood, or this is their budget for a home, or they're really just interested in a townhouse. Whatever it is, that it's actually none of your business what type of housing situation they might be in. So by contacting a local realtor, setting them up to provide your candidates with realtor tours, really kind of offers just an opportunity for the candidate to get to know the area in the manner with which they want to get to know the area. I have done it to the point where we actually pay a realtor in several of the states where Eide Bailly operates. We pay a specific realtor to take our candidates around. It's usually between $50 and $100, and it creates kind of a neat little experience for them. I also recommend that you bring their significant other, or if they have a significant other, bring that person with them to the interview days. They're not going to come into the office for the interview, but they can go on that realtor tour as well. And then while your candidate is meeting with you, if that realtor wants to follow up and meet with the significant other alone, then they can do that as well and kind of figure some things out. You also want to schedule a meet and greet dinner with your candidate and their significant other and individuals from the interview team the night before the interview as kind of a welcome. So have the candidate fly in, maybe in the morning, they go on their realtor tour, they go to dinner with you that evening, they come to the office and interview the next day. Another thing that you can do is have a basket of local goodies delivered to their hotel room prior to their arrival with a personalized note that indicates that you're excited to meet with them. That can be kind of fun, and we've had some great success with that in the various areas where Eide Bailly operates. And then if you are requiring somebody to move for the position, including a relocation package as part of the offer can go a long way. And it's more than just saying we're going to give you $5,000 in relocation dollars. It's more, find a moving company and directly pay that moving company to assist this individual with making that move. It's not always just about the finances when it comes to relocating. Sometimes it's about how the heck am I going to get all my stuff packed up? I don't have a storage unit. I'm not going to move into a home right away. I need to move into an apartment, and it's totally overwhelming for them. So putting them in touch with a relocation company who can help them with those types of stresses can go much further oftentimes than just giving them a lump sum bonus. When you are interviewing, it is really important to keep in mind that there are a lot of employment-related laws. So as you develop your recruitment process and as you develop interview questions, make sure that you are keeping in mind these various laws because they prohibit discrimination in specific areas. So Title VII prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, gender, and religion. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act prohibits discrimination based on pregnancy, childbirth, or medical conditions related to pregnancy or childbirth, and that is included in the recruitment process as well. So you cannot turn someone down simply because they show up to the interview pregnant. The Equal Pay Act prohibits discrimination based on pay. Men and women should be paid the same for the same job. The Age Discrimination in Employment Act prohibits discrimination of individuals over the ripe old age of 40. The Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination based on any disabilities and requires reasonable accommodation. And the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act prohibits discrimination based on genetic information, which includes both the individual or their family members. So you can't discriminate against somebody because you're afraid it might increase your insurance costs by having them on your plan or having somebody in their family on your plan. And you have to keep in mind that retaliation of an individual based on their filing of a claim on any of these factors is also against the law and prohibited. So basically what that means is that if a question has nothing to do with the job, don't ask it, right? If their gender has nothing to do with the job, which in 99.99999% of the cases is the case, don't ask the question. If you have a concern about something related to gender, and I'm trying to think of things, and in today's world it's pretty difficult, but you can't assume that a woman with children can't travel as part of the job. So if the job requires travel, you flat out ask, this job requires that you travel, are you able to meet that job requirement? But you have to ask that question of every single individual that you interview. Make sure that you create a process that you can use consistently for all applicants. It will not only help you get away from potential discrimination, but it also allows you the opportunity to get to know the information about each and every one of your candidates that you need to know in order to determine if they can do the job. And don't make assumptions. Ask appropriate job-related questions and get the answer. Don't assume something. If you have a concern about something, ask the question. You deserve to get the answer, so make sure that you ask the questions. So in summary, following a standard process for recruitment does require quite a bit of time and energy up front and throughout the process. But that time and energy is going to allow you to identify your need so that you can go out there and find the right person. And including others in the interview process is going to help you sell the position and organization to that right person. And that right person can then become your next top performer. So in the end, it's time and energy that's well spent. All right. That concludes the presentation portion. Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. Are you ready for this?
Good. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So this goes back to around like the probably third polling question.
Okay.
On the pre-screen slide, you've referenced specific questions on the second bullet, but none are listed. What were those questions?
Oh, I actually, when I send out the presentation, it will be in the notes for that particular slide.
And this one says, can Lori share the stats that she spoke about earlier, right when you're starting the webcast, based on age when you send out the slides?
Absolutely. They're already in there.
Perfect. Are all interviewers in the room at the same time, or is one at a time better?
That is a fantastic question. I go with the adage of, if you have more than one peer that you want included in the interview, the peers can be in one interview. If you have more than one supervisor or manager that you want included, those individuals can be in the interview, because you want the different groups to ask different types of questions. And think about it in the work world, you behave a little bit differently with your peers than you might with your manager and you might with a CEO or the executive, right? And so keeping those interviews separate and not putting all of them in one room can really help the candidate feel comfortable. More information will come out, and then when you get together to discuss how the interview went, you can talk about how the candidate actually behaved. So my recommendation is not to have everyone in the room at the same time from all the different levels, but you can break it up and have multiple individuals within a level interviewing. Does that make sense? You don't want it to be interrogation style. So you don't want them sitting on one side of the table and everybody else on the other side. And like I said, you're going to be asking the different types of questions. And so oftentimes having the peers start first can relax the candidate and help them feel more at ease so that they open up a little bit better. And you do want them to interact the way that they would with each of those different levels. Each of the levels wants to know how that employee could potentially perform or behave.
Awesome. We do have about 4 more questions. Do you want to take that now, or do you want to answer those privately offline?
I can take them now.
Okay.
I will stay as long as y'all need me to.
Okay. We'll stay at least 5 more minutes here.
Okay.
So, for a candidate who worked with a small company, do you have references for those former managers or supervisors? And then it says, for example, a board of director from a former company.
Okay, so I would say your references don't necessarily have to be from people who still currently work at the company. So if how do I phrase this? They don't still have to be at the company. It can be somebody who used to work for the organization, but you always want to make sure you tell the candidate, I don't want to talk to one of your peers. I want to talk to a previous supervisor or manager. And if that person no longer works for the company, they tend to be more comfortable talking to you anyway with regards to references. And somebody in a higher level position, I would say an executive director could have somebody from the board of directors do a reference on them, but I wouldn't imagine that the accounting clerk at a nonprofit would have as significant a relationship with the board to the point where they could do a reference. You just want to make sure that the reference is from someone who can tell you exactly how that individual performed in the job. Did that answer the question? If it didn't, if there's a follow-up, I'm happy to go offline on that one.
Yes, I believe it did.
Okay.
Okay, the next one here, regarding employment law, is there any specific prohibitions based on the candidate's health other than for pregnancy?
That is a very slippery slope to walk. What you would need to do is to establish what the physical requirements are for the position. If you have emotional requirements for the position based on the nature of your business, you will want to ask those types of questions of every single candidate. And just because someone is sick isn't a reason to not pursue them for a job. Now, when you do references, you might find out that they missed work a lot, and you could base it on the fact of attendance, but you can't assume anything. You want it, and that's why it is so important that you think about every single facet of the job and ask, especially physical requirements. This job requires that you lift 50 pounds. Are you able to do that? When have you done that in a previous position? All right, and that you ask as many questions as you can to determine if they have the physical ability to do the job. But you have to ask every candidate. You can't just, oh, I assume this person is unable to, right? And sometimes that can get awkward. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, you have somebody come in on crutches and this job requires that you stand for extended periods of time, or they come in a wheelchair. This job requires that you stand for extended periods of time, right? You have to ask the question. This job requires that somebody stand to operate this equipment. Are you able to perform that job requirement? And someone who has a disability is going to be able to say, I can with reasonable accommodation, and here's what the reasonable accommodation is, right? They're responsible for letting you know what that reasonable accommodation is. You cannot assume that they can't do the job. You have to ask the question. Again, I don't know if that answered the specifics, because I don't know what type of health-related situation they're referring to.
Do you have recommendations for companies to use for background checks?
Eide Bailey Forensic and Investigative Services is the one that I use. They do a fantastic job, usually a 2-day turnaround, and they can do, there's a lot of information that they can find. They have different packages. If you want something just basic, you can go just basic, or if you really need a lot of detail, they can do detailed ones as well.
All right, and the last question here. Do you go over the same information again that you talked about on the phone? Do you repeat it again in the office?
Oh, that's a great question. I like to save some special nuggets for the in-office interview, but usually what I do for the in-office interview is the information that is shared is more specific from the people who actually are doing the job, right? So you've got the peers talking about social activities, you've got the manager talking about career progression and performance management, the executive talking about the strategic plan. You do just a general overview. It's almost like if somebody went to your website, the stuff on your website is what you would share in the phone interview. And when they come in to learn more about you, you take them on the tour and you talk with them more in depth about things. And I totally forgot to include it in here. Information on benefits is crucial during the in-office interview, especially if you have a great benefit package. So some yes and some no. You do repeat some of it, but the phone interview, because that's only, it's literally 3 minutes of you talking about the company, maybe another 3 minutes talking about the position, and then you're asking the candidate questions. So it's very limited on the information that you're providing.
Awesome. Well, that is all of our questions.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for attending. We appreciate it. And I will be following up to those who have attended with a copy of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.